Hello guys, welcome to another mixing tutorial. Today we're taking a look at my mix of my cover of I the Destroyer by Monumentos. I love this song way too much, especially this bit. It's insane. This song is insanely good. And we got some cool stuff to look at, even though it's a very simple cover. No, very little tracks. It's not simple at all, the song. No. Okay. We'll start at the drum sound, but be aware that you'll be listening. The entire mix will be going through a mix bus compressor, a multi-band compressor, and the limiter too. As I play the music, you'll be hearing these working as well. And then in the end, I'll explain what every one of them is doing. Okay, let's then get to the drum sound. This is a new drum sound that, funnily enough, I started working on this drum sound for a Brazilian pop rock band I got to mix. Shout out to my boy Guilherme, who hooks me up with sick bands. And then with some tweaking, this ended up as a great metal sound. So the culprit is Modern and Massive. Using my favorite kit pieces, which are the Yamaha Recording Customs. So Yamaha Recording Custom toms, I believe. Yes. And Yamaha Recording Custom kick as well. But a new snare for me that I haven't used before was this Pearl Vinnie Paul maple snare. Very nice distribution of low end and high end. Middle of the road to high tuning. Very good and snappy. Modern and Massive cymbals aren't very what's the word I'm looking for? Distinct. I mean, if you're using Modern and Massive cymbals, you get one sound to choose from, basically, maybe two crashes. Yeah. So if I wasn't that lazy, I would have set up the Invasion cymbals, which are better. But these work perfectly and match the kit and the microphone, so who really cares? The Invasion is just here for extra cymbals, so an extra wide left crash and a stack. So that is what is happening. Let's go over some processing. We'll be taking the drums from this to this. Not a bad before and after, if you ask me. Following the same method of explaining as I'm doing on the mix bus, be aware that you'll be listening. Actually, no, I won't show the bus processing until the very end. Let's start where I start, which is the kick. Please solo the kick. Okay, that's before, after. All right, so we've taken it from a woody, natural kick to something a little bit more scooped and in your face. Let's see what I did to get there. This first EQ is giving us some of that high end that we need. 3 decibels at the shelf at 3K, excuse me, and cutting some bad low mid-range build-ups. That was 350 and that was 140. This gives it that metal kick drum shape. A compressor, Drumforge compressor, is very good in the sense that it just sounds like a mean compressor. It just gives you the vibe that you need. So it pumps the attack of your kick really loud, But in exchange for that, it also cuts down on the sustain. So here's a technique where if you mix in the compressed signal, you can get the better of both worlds, with the wet signal being your extra punchy and attacky kick, and the dry signal being your natural boomy decay that you want some of. So here's the compressor at 50. I'll put it at 100 and at 0 so you can see the two signals I'm blending. Here the difference is actually pretty subtle, but once I add the rest of the processing, it should make a bit more sense. A clipper. The clipper is here to, well, clip. So what it does is it clips the loudest attacks a little bit, and that makes them a little bit distorted and makes everything going into that wall a bit louder. So it's another way for us to cut down a bit on the attack and bump up the sustain, because the kick was pretty attacky now from the compressor. Now we need to get sustain. You can visually see the attacks being chopped off, and you can also hear some distortion on every attack if you pay close attention. Without. With. Very subtle, but it's just that little edge that's going to push it in the mix. R-Bass is here to give us extra sub-frequencies. This is a subharmonics. No, this is a harmonics generator. I'm using it as an EQ. So you grab the frequency that you want to generate harmonics at. In this case, it was 50 for that low rumble. And what this does is it gives you a little bit of 50, a little bit of 75, a little bit of 100, a little bit of 200. So it's an EQ that instead of just boosting 50, it's going to boost the harmonics above it too, which gives the 50 region extra perceived volume. This is an interesting tool. There's some free tools that I think can do this, such as Bark of Dog, which is a really cool. Let me see if I still have it from all those years ago. I don't have it. It's called Bark of Dog, in case you're wondering. It generates these sub-frequencies too in a cool way. But this is subtle. It's at minus 24 decibels. Okay, I said it was subtle, but if you have the right monitoring, you'll immediately hear what this is doing. And then an EQ to get rid of extra low end buildup. I already cut some 140 before all of the processing, but then I cut it again at the end of all processing. I'll boost it so you can see what I'm trying to get rid of. Some very, very boomy kick drum frequencies. All right. Snare tame. Let's go to a very snary part. It's this. So for the snare direct mic, I want there to be a very nice, clean, low end and high end balanced impact sound. Not too much sustain, because that will come from the room mics. We'll be going from this to this. Just beefing it up. The same EQ as the kick, basically. A shelf at 3K, giving us an extra 1.5 dB of high end. Then, the Brainworx SSL plugin is here for this little knob, actually not too much the EQ, but this little knob that saturates everything and gives it a very, very nice low mid presence. Check the before and after. You can actually hear it on the kick and cymbal bleed too, so that's a good tell. Some more high-end boosts at 8K and a very important little bump at 200 will make this EQ go a long way. And then the free saturation plugin from Reaper, built-in JS plugin, that's right, it just makes it sound louder and bigger. I don't know what else to tell you. You should try this on everything and see if you like it. it's an obvious 3 dB louder, like it says here, but it's not only 3 dB louder, the peak, but also the body. It's a very interesting sound. Drumforge compressor with the same philosophy, hard vibe for a really hard vibe. Thank you, João. Very cool. And then 50% wetness to mix in the natural signal. See how the full signal sounds punchy but almost choked off? And the dry signal just needs more and sounds very open. 50 is gonna get you there. I like it. I'm a big fan. Clipper. So, but this one will be working harder. Well, not really. So just a little bit of attack being cut on every snare hit, and it's gonna have softness on. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure what this does. You can see it being softer, literally. I like to think I can tell a difference in the distortion of every hit. If it's not soft, you'll hear a lot of it. If it is soft, you hear less, and it's less loud. I think that's what it's doing, but I'm not sure. I'm just here to show how I got this sound. But honestly, sometimes I just try shit that I don't even know how it really works. And then our bass is going on the 100 Hz region for real boominess on the snare. Check a before and after on that. I thought it would be more apparent, but this is what's giving us snare subharmonic almost content that makes it not be disjointed with the kick. Because if the kick is a sub power, which this one is, they can sound disjointed, and right now they do a little bit. So you gotta give the snare some subs, and you gotta let the kick have some mids, so that this kick and snare don't sound too far apart. Okay, so toms are all being processed in group. They're just louder and very, very low endy. I should cut this. I didn't, so I won't show you with the cut, but I should oh, okay, I kind of did. So yeah, taking it back, here's the SSL. We're saturating it a little bit, emulating the old console vibe. So here's a high pass up to 70 Hertz actually. But this is a very easygoing slope. It's not a hard cut at 70. It's an easygoing slope that lets a lot of subs go through, but it still cuts down on some of them, so that's good. Boosting high end at 6K, cutting mid-range at 900. This is the very important tom EQ move. Making your toms not sound like cardboardy trash. Into DF comp at 50. Once again, same philosophy. The 100% is going to sound very choked off and attacky. I mean, we're only talking about 2 decibels on the toms. I'm not hitting them hard, so I could have this at 100, but I still try the 50. That was the vibe on this mix. That's what I went with. And then C4. So the idea behind C4, this is a multi-band compressor, so it's compressing different frequency bands independently of each other. What I wanted was for the low-end band to be compressed every time the tom was attacked, so the attack had a bit less low-end, but the decay then could have more low-end as it opened up. I'm going to solo the low-end band and tell me if you can see what's going on. This is a way you can give your toms extra low end decay. Very, very funny method. All right, going on to the, I call this cymbal bus. that's wrong. This is brass, because this is not only cymbals, this is the rooms too. Yes. All right. So brass bus is everything that's not a direct mic in my book. That's what I call it. So the brass bus is being EQ'd. We're getting rid of stuff beneath 100. That low end punch is for direct mics. And then we're boosting nice cymbal clarity at 12K and cutting cymbal harshness at 4K. Everything here has cymbals, so everything here needs those cuts, as well as some harsher cuts on frequencies such as 2.6. Can you hear that nasty? Some cymbals just have these. And then my latest best friend on killing cymbal and guitar resonances, it's the BX refinement. So I am reducing 2 decibels, but of what exactly? Of the really harsh 2.5 to 4K area. This plugin reduces those dynamically, so only when they're really strong you would see it dip, kind of like Sooth if you know the plugin. I can solo what it's doing so you can hear just those frequencies, and that's what's going to teach you best what this is doing. It's that hissy shit that this really helps taming it. Hi-hat microphone. Just cut anything beneath 200. It's a cymbal, big deal. Overhead. Wait a second. Oh, I left BX refinement on the hissy shit solo. I've been doing this every mixing tutorial. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Overhead. Cut anything beneath 250. That's for the direct mics. And compress. So since the overhead compressor is really strong on this plugin, and I picked the hard vibe because I wanted it to be strong, it's mixed in at 35%. You want to see what 100 sounds like? It sounds like in-your-face cymbals all the time. I love it, but I only needed about 35%. Very cool overhead compressor. Room close, I like to not touch. Very natural kit picture. Just the SSL saturation and I'll be good. Literally makes it sound just a bit louder and a bit more distorted. It's just more of what it is, really. Room far. Room far is a very important microphone for me because it's the complement to the direct snare mic. If the direct snare mic is sounding a little bit boring right now, the room far is what's gonna give it decay. How do you do this? First, what I like to do is in the mixer, on the snare, I send a lot of snare to the room far microphone and not a lot of cymbals and not a lot of kick at all and some toms. So when you solo the room far mic, it's basically a little bit of everything and a bunch of snare. What then happens is that you slam it with a compressor and you get this. It brings everything up so that it sounds like a big room mic, and then the snare is so loud that it destroys the compressor and becomes the only thing you can hear for the duration of the snare hit. So that's just it. Room compressor, hard vibe, and 100% wetness. I'm not joking around here. And about 15 to 16 decibels of cut on every snare hit to make it just destroy the cymbals on this mic. And that's what gives the snare direct mic's attack its decay. It's night and day, and they complement each other well. There's an EQ before the compressor to reduce cymbals going into the compressor. So that's cutting on the 3K region. Not too apparent actually. I thought it would be more apparent. And of course, saturating it just a little bit more. Very good. The mono mic is a cool effect mic that Modern and Messick gives you, and I don't send too much cymbals to it. In this case, I actually did. Okay, so this gives you a mic that's very centered, and that's kind of distorted already. I'm gonna boost it. Sounds like a distorted trash mic. All I did to it was boost some more high end, because I did like the cymbal vibe today, and it was for a pop, almost pop punk mix, remember? So I did like that, and a lot of saturation. Blend it in. And all right, we are much closer to a drum sound I like. Then, funnily enough, we are going to slap an EQ, a compressor, and another EQ after on this baby. So check out the before and after on these three elements. This is where I grabbed what was good about this drum sound, and I really turned it up so it could fit a metal mix. Check out, if I don't do this, how it sounds with the rest of the music. Sounds okay, but it needed 4 more decibels to fight through. Now check it out. Now you can properly hear the kick low end, the cymbal and snare cutting through. That's what this is about. So the first EQ is boosting 10K. That's what we're doing here. This is for the shell attack and for the cymbal washiness as well. Drum compressor is here to grab our very loud snare and do a little bit of what the Room 4 mic did. Tuck the snare down with the rest of the kit and turn everything else up. It just sounds a little bit bigger, but also more controlled because there's less dynamics. And the EQ after, it's basically layering the same high-end boost at 10K, but also this 60 Hertz motherfucker. To be completely honest with you, there's a trick on this Pultec EQ. The way it works is you choose a frequency, and then there is a boost knob and a cut knob. So there is no cutting and boosting on the same knob, so you can do both at the same time. And if you can imagine 60 Hertz, a shelf at 60 Hertz, if I do the boost and then I do the cut at the same time, it leaves you with a stupid curve. That sounds good. Check a before and after on this. Listen for the kick. It just makes it sound fluffier and of course bassier in a really good way. So that is the drum sound. Very cool. Moving on to bass. I'm sorry guys, I'm not used to talking a lot. This bass tone is a monster too. Alright, so what's going on here? Let's get our DI sound. cool. What did I think of this? I thought it had a little bit too much dynamics, a little bit inconsistent. So I hit it with a limiter straight off the bat. This limiter is going to cut the highest peaks and boost everything else up so that this is a very consistent bass signal. It just sounds like a break of bass, which is what I want when the frequencies are this low. It distorts a little bit too, but we're gonna distort it anyway, so that's okay. Our bass tone engine is the Joel Wanasek Bus Glue bass plugin. This has a module for you to compress and level low end, which I'm doing this on. Please turn it on. A very stable 12 decibels of bass compression. If the limiter wasn't on, this would be all over the place. Well, I didn't play too inconsistently, so that's good for me. And then you can also compress the top end and distort it here, which you obviously just listened to the effect. My distortion of choice today was distortion B, because it's very clear and attacky, while the others are a little bit fuzzier and clankier. No, this one is the clankiest. I love tone words, whatever. EQ after, filtering, so nothing beneath 42 Hertz, that's the kicks business. Littlest scoop at 400, very negligible, and no fizz above 6K. Very soft shaping of the bass tone. A limiter again, but this one is just to get rid of the nastier attacks. Then I thought it could use even more low-end content, because in the mix it wasn't poking through, and that's what max bass does. It's just like our bass, but it's the opposite. So if you pick 80 Hertz, our bass is going to give you 80, 160, 240 to amp that volume. If you pick 80, max bass is going to give you 80, 40, 20 to give it sub content. I'm going to solo the max bass effect. That's insane. What you do is you blend it with your original bass and you get, and you just get prime thickness. Then I just filtered again because I added subs, so I had to filter the extra subs again. Anything beneath 48 Hertz was just there to destroy my mix. So there you go. Let's go to the guitar tone. I had a tough time with this guitar tone. The beautiful KM7, now comparing to the Telecaster and the new Mayones guitar, that guitar has such amazing character. It's so unique. The combination of the building, the wood, and the Seymour Duncan Omega, which is Mark's pickup, it makes the guitar extremely, extremely mid-rangey, but in the honky 700 to 1K. You can hear it on the DI. You can hear it doing bow, 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 bow. It just barks. It's incredible. No guitar I ever had sounded like this. And this is incredible. I love this sound, and I can immediately tell if someone is playing that guitar. It sounds like Keith Merrow. It does sound like Keith Merrow. But this poses its problems that my usual tones will react a lot differently. So today I went with a really, really new tone I didn't think I'd ever be using. This is a preset on the STL plugin Will Putney plugin called Metal Blend, and it sounds like this. When I heard this, I thought, this is way too harsh. Like, no way. But when I heard it with the mix, I was like, okay, this can work actually. I was very, very pleasantly surprised. Here's how I treated it afterwards. There's a really prominent 4K annoying region. So we got that handled. Then this bad boy is handling anything beneath that 2.5 to 4K. These frequencies. So now we got more of something I like, which is a fatter tone. This is here to give us those filters. So get rid of subs, get rid of mid-range buildups in the low mid-range, and fizz. Instantly more controlled. And then an experiment compressing with this compressor, the Renaissance Axe, to give us even more attack and the character and more volume, every little note to be heard. And then the limiter to cut down on the peaks, and you got these. This guitar tone is very unlike me, but I like how it turned out. Also, the bass just does every bit of the work. No bass. It's insane how much the bass tone adds. Crazy shit. As for the leads, this is just a sustained note that I edited to always be there because I couldn't feedback properly. Chose the same tone for it to blend nicely. There's a very big cut on the mid-range here. Let's listen to what it's doing. Getting rid of very annoying harmonics. This same guy, but cranked. So check it out. Getting rid of every little bit of harshness. Hardcore filters, so up to 250 and down to 5K. And some reverb to make it fit the stereo image. That's all that was done to this guy. Chorus lead, which is actually a clean. I don't usually call these leads. Well, once again, very dynamic clean sound. Let's limit it to make sure it's always a consistent volume. Hit it with a clean plugin. The SS11X working really hard once I cut the bass and middle. Very pleasant character with this cabinet. Bunch of reverb, 35% wetness at 8 seconds. 8 note delay at ping pong setting to give it some nice stereo bounce. Filter EQ, so cutting below 300, cutting above 7K, and cutting mid-range at 500. Very boxy frequencies that belong on the guitarist. And of course, our savior, getting rid of annoying shit. If I overuse this on my mix, the mix goes way too soft. But since the guitars were so scratchy on this mix, I can get away with getting those frequencies out of everything else. Then there's a different lead on the second chorus and on the final one too. We start on the same tone as the rhythms, but I went to the EQ and filtered it up. So I turned the low pass filter as low as it could to cut down on fizz, and the high pass filter as high as it went to cut down on bass. This is what gives it the lo-fi sound. The same reverb, 3 seconds and 25% mix, just give it enough of a spread. This same stereo delay, very cool. This is 20% mix. This may have a higher feedback setting so that you can hear it bouncing for longer. Filters, so nothing beneath 250 and nothing above 9K. And of course, Brainworks refinement. Let's get rid of hissy shit. Very cool. So afterwards, after I get this dialed in, I'll play the loudest part of the song, which is chorus 3, that has the most shit going on, and I will turn on my 3 mix bus thingies and set them the way I like. So first things first would be the mix bus compressor. Somewhere around the 3 dB of compression range sounds very good on this mix. It makes the kick and snare fit perfectly without either not being too much and making them sound disjointed, and being way too much and it just sounds like a sausage. The transformer of choice today is Nickel. Nickel is just a little high-end boost at 10K. So more cymbal shine, more guitar shine. Multiband compressor is just here, put it on and forget it, so that it fixes any frequency imbalances. If my bass is too loud, it's going to tell me, and I can choose to let this fix it, or to actually go to the mix and turn down the bass. If the guitars are too loud, it will show me on this band, and I can choose to let it fix it or go turn down the guitars. I like the sound of when the multiband compresses them by itself. And then there's everything else. This is just a really easy step to put this on your mix bus, any multiband compressor you have, and see what it tells you about the frequency balance on your mix. And you can either choose to let it fix it with compression, or to go to your mix and change it. So that's what this is doing. Ozone 8 is being used for limiting. I'm also cutting anything beneath 30 Hertz before it hits the limiter. Not using any stereo imaging. And then the limiter I like at Intelligent Release Control 2 because it just sounds the cleanest. I like a very fast character so that if I am going to be limiting hard, I don't want it to be pumpy, but I would prefer that it's distorted than pumpy because that's the choice you're given here. If it's slow, you don't hear distortion, but you hear the volume doing this. If it's fast, you'll hear it all the time, but it will be distorted. Since this is metal, I'd rather hear it all the time and be distorted. It's not even a setback. And let's see how much we are reducing in terms of gain. What I like to see on heavy songs, always a little bit of reduction, and as much as 6 dB or 7 dB on a hard kick and snare hit is probably going to give me the loudness vibe that I like. So that is my mix of Eye the Destroyer, not many tracks, but a very complete mix. Thank you for watching this. If you're watching this, you're a Patreon supporter, and that means the world to me. Be sure to watch all the other mixing tutorials you have access to. And yes, and take part in this cool community. You can drop a little comment on the Patreon post for this mix if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.